You guys straight up killed it on the benchmark. Look at this list of people who scored either master or higher. You got Jerome, Devin, Jairi, straight up new, but came in and killed it. Angel, Demaya, Kittrell, Krishan, Dylan, Tori, Paris, Don Sheree, Samaj, Tyler, Chrislyn, Lenora, Diamond, Trayvon, Mariah, Justin, Lorenz, Amaya, Troy Lynn, Chelsea, Jermaine, and with 100% Baron Shine. Time to catch up, people. And then this is the list that I'm most proud of because so many of these people are so close to making it up to mastery as well. There were like more than half of the people on this list were one question away from mastery with a 74.4. They needed one more question to hit that 75 mark and they would have been on that mastery list. That includes Clavion, Avia, Brian Crittenden, Aaron, Asia, Jerron, Zane, Michael, Leon, Kalisha, Ricky, Brian McCoy, Dejanay, Colby, Emanuelita, Ikea, India, and Ahmad. Way to catch up, Ahmad. You got it. So that's the kind of work that we need to see that gets us success. There's one more step we can take, and that's that little bit of extra studying right before the test that's going to bump you up that one question. Find that one question, that one fact that you don't know, and that's what you'll get right on the next test. That's what will bump you up to that next level, to mastery. Or if you're one of those people that's not on that basic list, almost everybody not on that basic list was one question away from being on the basic list. So that one question matters. Get it next time. Awesome job this time. We'll see it in 3 weeks, I think is our next MLQ. So today and for the rest of the week, we're talking about early European exploration in Louisiana history. The reason we're doing this week, we're cutting into our economics unit, but I wanted to put this in before we do our French Quarter field trip. So we've got talking about a bunch of different explorers in Louisiana, and from those explorers, we're going to talk about what happened in Louisiana's history that developed the city of New Orleans how it is today. So the first explorer, and pause right there, make sure that you're not writing all of this next to the explorer's name. I want you to find out what you think is the most important thing that he did. So this is Hernando de Soto. He was a Spanish explorer. So he's from Spain. He's Spanish. He was the first European to see the Mississippi River. He wrote in his journal of a mighty river that runs as far as the eye can see. He died on his journey, but the news of the river eventually got back to Europe, and that's what made people want to come here to Louisiana to start a colony. Because remember, they needed the farming, they wanted the trade on the river, they wanted the transportation, all that stuff about rivers. So this is De Soto's expedition. He started out here in Havana, which is in Cuba, and he sailed his ship over to Florida. Then he went up and walked and walked and walked, and you can tell he really doesn't know what he's doing so much. He looks a little bit lost. He's all over the place, all over the place. Where is he going? He found the Mississippi River. There he goes. He goes down the little Mississippi River. At some point, he goes over here to this little river, and you can see that the arrow stops. The reason why it stopped is because he knew he was lost, and so he was kind of wandering around in the woods, and all his men also knew he was lost. So they, one time when he was ahead of them, they got up behind him and they shot him in the back because they didn't want to be lost. They wanted to go home. So they shot him in the back. He's dead now. And so that way they can go home. They turn around. They get on this arrow back here, back to the Mississippi River. They go all the way down, and they end up in the ocean, go down to Mexico where there was a city. So what De Soto found when he came to Louisiana was not that it was a place that was empty, but rather it was a place that had hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people already living there. And these people were divided up into a bunch of different Native American tribes. This map right here shows which different tribes were in which different places. And the Native American history is a whole big thing that we could go into. But all that we need to know for just for our little slight background is that they were divided up all over the state like this. You've got the Caddo, Tunica, Natchez, Homa, Choctaw, Atacapa, Chitimacha, There were tons and tons of different tribes. One of the things that these tribes did that was really distinctive was they built mounds like this, and they would build their houses on top of these mounds. And that could be for many different reasons. It could protect from floods. It could protect from attack. It could also be used as a symbol of status that showed that they were higher up than the other people who were living on the ground. So we're not entirely sure why they built these mounds, but we know that they exist in lots of different Native American sites in Louisiana. So here's a map that shows where they all are. All those little, the little triangles show mound sites, and then you've got the biggest ones, which there's one at LSU. There's one in a place called Marksville right there. One at Watson Brake, and then Poverty Point is actually the most famous. This is Poverty Point right here. It's huge. They have all these mounds all around here. That one's like enormous, and up here. And so people thought that this may have been a really big city. But nobody knows for sure what it was. So those are Native American mounds from a long time ago. The next explorer on your list is La Salle. La Salle sailed down the Mississippi River from the French cities in the north. As he sailed down the river, he claimed all the land around the river for France, and he named it La Louisiane after the French King Louis. So the reason why La Salle is important is because he's the reason that Louisiana turned into a French colony. Otherwise, it could have been British, it could have been Spanish like De Soto was, but because La Salle was there, he said, this is French. Nobody disagreed with him, except the Native Americans. Third one is Iberville. Iberville was a French explorer too, and yes, the projects are named after him. He traveled to Louisiana to establish a French settlement at Biloxi. This was the first French settlement in the part of Louisiana. And he eventually went back to France because he didn't really like life in the New World. He didn't really like living in the Americas. He said it was too hard. But his brother was really important because his brother is Bienville. And Bienville was also French, right? Came down with Iberville. But he stayed in Louisiana, and he stayed so that he could establish the city of New Orleans. He was its first governor, which made it so he was the first person to lay out the city. He designed the city. He set it up so that it would have a French Quarter like it does, and it would have like Jackson Square right on the river. All those things were his idea. So he's super important in the history of Louisiana. Here is his first map of New Orleans. You can see that was the entire city right there. It was tiny, right? Just a few square blocks. You can see the ships come here. That's where Jackson Square and the cathedral is. We're going to be there on Thursday. And you'll be able to walk around and explore a bunch of different sites around here. So Louisiana was originally French, right? La Salle was French, Bienville was French, Iberville was French. They claimed all that area for France. But France lost a war against Britain. When France lost that war in 1763, right before they lost, they signed a secret treaty with Spain so that Louisiana and New Orleans especially would go to Spain. So instead of being British, Louisiana became Spanish. It was French, and now it's Spanish. It was French, and now it was Spanish. So they did that so they could keep it away from the British. The British beat the French in the war. So the French knew that they were going to take Louisiana. So right before, they gave it to the Spanish. When they gave it to the Spanish sent this guy. His name's Antonio de Ulloa. He was the first governor sent from Spain. And so he was just a scientist guy. He had no soldiers to support him or protect him. He didn't speak French. He only spoke Spanish, so he didn't have any way to communicate with the people that were in New Orleans. And so he tried to make all these laws, but nobody listened to him. Not only did they not listen to him, but they kicked him out. The French in Louisiana didn't like him because they didn't like his laws. So they picked him up and they said, go ahead, goodbye, go back to Spain. We're going to run ourselves. We're going to be French. The Spanish, they didn't like this. They brought their own guy back. They return with a guy named Alejandro O'Reilly. He's going to be the second governor, and he shows up with the army. Right? Ulloa didn't have any soldiers. O'Reilly has 2,000. So he shows up with his 2,000 soldiers. They flood the streets of New Orleans with soldiers. And he takes the Frenchmen who had kicked out Ulloa, and he lines them up and shoots them all and puts their heads on sticks on the Mississippi River as a message. He wants to make sure that the Spanish have control over New Orleans, and he does. His nickname, by the way, was Bloody O'Reilly because of what he did. So still to this day, there are lots of different things in and around the city of New Orleans that show that New Orleans was once French and then Spanish. For example, you'll see on your field trip a whole bunch of street signs that show what the name of the street was back when it was Spanish. So you can see if you can match these up with the actual American street names that they have now. So that's a little bit of the history. We're going to go more into it tomorrow. But know from today that Louisiana was first French because of Bienville and Iberville and LaSalle. And then it was Spanish, and it was transferred over to Spain after France lost a war with Britain.